Commissioner first round interview process. The commission has decided to try something new with its process, and what we've done is we've invited stakeholders in the third ward to participate on this subcommittee, and this subcommittee's charge is to interview the candidates. We will have 15-minute interviews with all candidates today, and then the subcommittee will then make a decision to forward a number of those candidates to the full commission for further interviews. So I'd like to, Commissioner O'Connor, if we can start with you, just have everyone introduce themselves. We have our first candidate ready for the interview, and he's on speakerphone. His name is Ryan Anderson, so that he'll be aware of who's present with us this afternoon.
John O'Connor, First Ward City Commissioner.
Raul Isasi, Third Ward.
Christina Olmeda, Third Ward.
Oh, you want me to talk too? I get to talk? Joel Hondorp, Grand Rapids City Clerk.
Jermel Eddy, Third Ward.
Sam Cummings, Second Ward.
Joanne King, Third Ward.
Joe Jones, Second Ward City Commissioner.
Thank you all. And so what we've decided is we have 5 questions that each candidate will be asked to respond to.
Can you make sure Mr. Anderson hears?
Sure. Mr. Anderson, can you please confirm that you can hear us okay?
Yeah, hi. Thanks for including me remotely. And for the most part, I can hear you fairly well. There was a couple of voices that were a little bit quiet, but for the most part, it's pretty good.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for that. So if you are asking a question, please make sure your microphone is on and that you speak clearly into the microphone. I think that'll help Mr. Anderson to hear. We have 5 questions for you, Mr. Anderson, and each question we will have a timer set, and you won't be able to see it, but we'll be able to see it to give you 2 minutes to respond to each question. So we'll just get right to it, and we'll start with our very first question. Ms. Joanne King will ask that question.
Hi, Ryan. My question to you is, why are you interested in serving as a commissioner for the Third Ward?
Sure. So just to confirm, the question was, why am I interested in serving in this role? And if I heard you right, I think I have 2 minutes. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. 2.
Okay, great. Well, the short answer is I've dedicated most of my professional life to kind of splitting my time between working in the business world and working in a variety of community roles. I've had the privilege to be on quite a few boards and be involved with a lot of nonprofits. But I actually started out my professional career hoping to be more involved in the civic side of things. Interned as a representative at the House back in my Michigan State days. And I've just been waiting to see if there was an opportunity where I might be able to take the experiences that I've had and be of service to the city. I think this is a unique situation because the role that Commissioner Elm is stepping down from provides a chance to step in for a year, hopefully bring something a little bit different, and be able to pilot and prototype new ways of impacting the city for the better. So the short answer would be, it just feels like a natural progression of the things that I've done. And if I can be of service in the role, I'll be glad to.
Thank you. Next question, Mr. Eddy.
Yes, Ryan. The next question is asking you to identify 2 assets in 2 areas of concern that you see that exist in the Third Ward.
Was the question 2 areas of concern in the Third Ward?
2 assets and 2 areas of concerns of the Third Ward.
Sorry, was the first one 2 assets?
Yes.
That I bring?
No, that already exists within the ward.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you very much. Again, sorry for not being able to hear real well. Well, I'd say the first thing that comes to mind, and it's one of the reasons why I love living in the Third Ward, is the area is more diverse, both socioeconomically, racially. I think there's a lot of interesting things happening in the ward, both in terms of economic growth, but it also represents a concern in terms of being able to make sure that people don't become disenfranchised and marginalized in the process. We've had the chance over the course of the last year or 2 to be sponsors for a refugee family as one example that comes to mind in terms of how I've experienced this personally. And having them be close to us in the community has given us a chance to show them kind of the wealth of things that are happening culturally. as well as in terms of new job growth, et cetera. But in terms of finding affordable housing and making sure that people have an easy entree to prosper economically, we've seen those as well. So if I had to itemize those, I'd say there's encouraging positive economic growth, which is certainly an asset, and there's a diversity of people and activities happening, which would be the second. The issues that I think are most pronounced would be the concerns over racial economic disparity, because I think I'm seeing those even more than I have in the past, and the concern around lack of affordable housing. I think we're doing okay there compared to some other cities that I've taken a look at in terms of benchmarking. But the more growth we have, the more that some of those concerns are going to be exacerbated. So I think it's just a matter of making sure that we make sure that those opportunities are presented to all, and that we don't find ourselves in a situation where some are prospering and others are not.
Thank you. Mr. Cummings?
Hi, Ryan. You're looking really good today. One of the primary responsibilities of a city commissioner is the ratification of the annual budget. And I know it's kind of predictable that I would ask this question perhaps, but if you could just give us some background in your qualifications on or financial aptitude in being able to thoughtfully review such a budget and pass it.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Well, I have a business background, a bachelor's in marketing and an MBA. Actually, an MBA with an emphasis in nonprofit administration. So I've had some experience in terms of governance and financial oversight in both the for-profit and nonprofit worlds. In terms of like my day job, I've always had roles where I'm responsible for a budget that may range from tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of dollars that needs to be appropriately stewarded. And in terms of my nonprofit involvement, you know, I've had everything from back when I was board president of Kids Food Basket. We had a small but quickly growing budget that needed a lot of attention in terms of what it looked like to grow. More recently, being on the board of Meyer Garden and just completing an $118 million capital campaign, very different form of fiscal oversight. But the budgets and bylaws side of governance doesn't dismay me at all. I recognize that this is the way that policy gets effectively enacted, and I think I bring about 25 years of experience in terms of managing budgets to the role.
Thank you.
Next, we have Mr. Yusasi.
Hi, Brian. What are you looking for in a city manager? Can you tell us a little about that?
That's a great question, and I'll be the first to say I think I need to learn more about what makes an effective city manager. I've certainly been watching as a citizen you all go through the process. My instincts would tell me that someone that has successfully been an administrator, particularly in a similar form of governance over a city of equal or smaller size, would be an excellent qualification, or somebody who's got a proven history in terms of administering something along the lines of a larger institutional organization, whether that's a large healthcare system or a large school. I don't know that typical business qualifications or nonprofit qualifications would quite suffice if I think about the sheer administrative scope of what a city manager needs to do, the significant fiscal responsibility that person would need to bring. So I think I would probably start with looking at people that have like experiences that could effectively use those experiences in a role like this. But if I were fortunate to be appointed to the role, that would probably be one of the very first things I'd want to do a lot of deep study on is what makes a great city manager and what doesn't.
Thank you. And then your last question, Commissioner O'Connor.
Hi, Ryan. If appointed to the role of Third Ward City Commissioner, you would serve in that role for a little over a year and would then be up for re-election next year. Would you consider running for re-election if appointed?
I would. I don't think I would get into this if it weren't an option, but I also want to be real transparent in saying that I think this is a unique opportunity to see if I can be effective in a role like this. I would want to take an honest and sincere look at what I could contribute over the course of a year and determine whether or not I was effective in the role. I've been pretty fortunate to have a pretty good range of activities throughout my career. Most of them, because I'm a fairly quick learner, I've been able to be successful at. A handful, I haven't. And so I would enter into this with a desire to give my all, be of service, and to try to honestly assess whether or not I was making a difference. If I didn't feel like I was, I wouldn't run. But if I did, I certainly would want to continue to serve in that role, and I recognize that would mean an election and campaigning and things of that nature.
Thank you.
Thank you. So thank you, Mr. Anderson, for your time this afternoon. This committee will be making a decision regarding which candidates they will move forward to the City Commission for their next round of interviews.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate very much being considered, and thanks for accommodating me while I was on a family vacation.
No problem. Thanks for taking the time.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. So while the city clerk is, or his team is handling that, our next candidate is heading up from the second floor. So any notes that you have, you may want to, jot those down. So that could have been like a practice round. So this next time I won't have to ask each person. Just know that after you know your number, and once we get started after Joanne starts, we'll just kind of go into the next person and so on and so forth.
I gotta remember my number.
Who was that, Commissioner Jones?
Staple it to my forehead.
Can't do that, you'll be dizzy. Do I need to give the order so that everybody knows?
Number 3, right?
So Ms. King is number 1, Mr. Eddy is number 2, Mr. Cummings is number 3, Mr. Isasi is number 4, and Commissioner O'Connor is number 5. Paula, good afternoon.
Hi, how are you?
I'm well. Thank you so much for being with us this afternoon.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
So I'll just quickly share, this subcommittee is made up of stakeholders in the 3rd Ward. So we will quickly just introduce ourselves, and then we'll get right into the interview.
Thank you.
We will have 5 questions, and you'll have 2 minutes to respond to each of those 5 questions.
Okay, thank you.
So Commissioner O'Connor? Just introducing your name.
Oh, John O'Connor. That's what I was thinking.
Not your question, not your question. Yeah.
Welcome.
I like that you're ready and woke. That's good.
Hi, Paula. I'm Raul Islastic, 3rd Ward.
Hello, nice to meet you.
Christine Olmeda, 3rd Ward.
Joel Hondo, Grand Rapids City Clerk.
Sunita Lanier, 3rd Ward Commissioner.
Jamal Eddy, 3rd Ward.
Sam Cummings, a 2nd Ward resident.
Joanne King, 3rd Ward.
Joe Jones, 2nd Ward Commissioner.
Ms. King, you can get us started.
Okay, so Paula, why are you interested in being a commissioner for the 3rd Ward?
Well, first of all, I would like to start off by saying I thank you all very much for inviting me for this opportunity. I feel very flattered, actually. I am interested in the 3rd Ward because I have invested my whole life there. I went to school there. I went to South. I went to Jefferson. I grew up there. My fabric of my life is in that community, and I'm very deeply concerned about the things that happen, about the investment in the people in that community, and I feel that a lot of things need to be eradicated, changed, and people need to be supported in that community. And I'm really hoping that if I am able to have a voice to this process, that I will be able to allow that voice to be heard and have the support brought into that community.
Thank you.
Paula, could you identify two current assets and two areas of concern that exist in the third ward?
The third ward is a large ward, as you know. Currently, they do have several small organizations that work together to, build the benefit of the community. People are trying to work together at the grassroots level to put into people, to help homeowners, to help people, stakeholders, to small business owners. There are several. Right now, I'm currently serving on the ASB plan with the steering committee, trying to develop this process to build into the community and have a nice outcome. I think that the community has the kinship, the relationships. There are several very valid, great things about the community. But then there are the negative aspects where people are not, it's a high dropout rate, a very high poverty rate. There is very difficult to find jobs. And I think people need to have more opportunities.
Thank you.
Hi,
Hi.
how you doing today?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Great. One of the primary responsibilities of a city commission or the city commission is the passage of the annual budget, which is this year north of $500 million. Maybe if you could explain to us the qualifications you have and the background, what you would leverage to help you articulate that budget, that budget, and provide a vote for it.
Well, the education that I do have a master's degree in business administration, but I do have the experience as far as working with people, qualified to communicate. And when I can communicate and I know how to network and come together and we share information. I know that no one can do this alone. So what I bring to the table is my experience of communicating. I can't sit down and put $1 billion budget before me and say, here it is, it's worked out. I have to have the proper people at the table and delegate responsibility and know how to have people in place that are experienced in that particular area to do that job. So that's what I bring to the table. But because I'm qualified as I have an MBA, I do know how to select those people.
Thank you.
Paul, I have the next question. What are you looking for in a city manager?
A city manager is first and foremost credibility. Credibility is huge. Integrity, someone who is trustworthy and someone who is diligent, loyal, and can stay to task, completing the job before him or her, and faithful.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Last question here. If you're appointed, you'll serve a little over a year and a half, about a year and a half as a city commissioner, and then you would have to run for re-election if you want. Are you committed to running for re-election if you were appointed to this position?
Yes, I would be.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So Paula, that concludes the 5 questions that we have. Today, this committee is charged with making a decision about which of the candidates that we interview today that we will send forward to the full City Commission to interview. And those interviews are scheduled for the 24th. The 24th.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you so much for your time.
Y'all have a great day.
Thanks, you too.
Well, yeah. Okay, well,
I want to go into room 9, that'll get them a little faster. Just gonna speed up the process a little bit with getting them from floor 2nd to floor 9. Yeah, I don't like dead air. I don't like dead air.
Good afternoon. Thank you.
So, Mr. Dean, we are the subcommittee interviewing the 3rd Ward City Commissioner candidates. And we will quickly introduce ourselves, and then we will go through 5 questions. And in each of those questions, you will have 2 minutes to respond to those questions.
Okay.
And then we'll conclude. Mr. O'Connor?
Hi, John O'Connor, 1st Ward City Commissioner.
Hi, Austin. I'm Raul Islassi, 3rd Ward.
Hi, Raul.
Christina Olmeda, Third Ward.
Joel Hondo, Grand Rapids City Clerk.
Sunita Lanier, 3rd Ward City Commissioner.
Jermel Eddy, 3rd Ward.
Hi, Austin. Sam Cummings. I'm a 2nd Ward resident.
Joanne King, 3rd Ward.
Joe Jones, 2nd Ward Commissioner.
Hi, Joe.
Ms. King will get us started.
Well, hi Ryan, how are you? I mean, Austin, I'm sorry.
I'm good, thank you.
Me. Why, can you tell us why you are interested in serving as a commissioner for the 3rd Ward?
Yes, absolutely. First, let me say thank you all for the opportunity to be here. I think my story actually starts when my wife and I were trying to find a home, recently engaged, where we wanted to settle down, and we were looking for a place that was affordable, that was fit within our budget, and we wanted quick access to downtown, More importantly, we wanted a place that was racially diverse. And as we were thinking about a family and kids, we were trying to find a place where we felt they could grow up in a diverse environment, be exposed to new cultures and people. So we settled on Sylvan Avenue, which is just down the street from Hall Street Bakery. And as we've grown accustomed to the neighborhood and built relationships with the neighbors, I find myself hungry for more vibrant business districts. I find myself hungry for new opportunities for my neighbors to run local businesses, to have access to jobs with decent wages, opportunities to own their own homes. And I think we all can agree that the first and second ward have benefited from a lot of investment over these past 10 years, and I don't think the third ward in particular has had that same level of opportunity, and that's evidenced by the 53% black unemployment rate in some of the neighborhoods in the third ward. And there's a lot of root causes for that, managerial racism and education, among others. But I think the people of the third ward, as it always is, are the real asset here. And my neighbors who've been there for over 50 years, there's 3 generations of kids coming and going from the homes. There's a tremendous amount of pride, and I think that pride is contagious. And for me, I've worked the past 10 years serving small business owners, working in an economic development space, and I've seen people turned away from loans based on bad credit, no collateral immigration status. They can't access programs because the programs weren't designed for them. I've also have a story of a Latino business owner who actually had a contract from a local developer and lost that contract because he wasn't able to get credit for working capital from a bank, and so he lost that contract. And there are numerous
Mr.
other.
Dean, so your 2 minutes are up for that question. We just
Thanks.
want to make sure we give you enough time for all of them.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Austin, identify 2 current assets and 2 areas of concern that you see that exist within the third ward.
Absolutely. I think the most prominent issue right now is affordable housing. I think that the second is probably job opportunities and underemployment in the black community in particular. The third being infrastructure improvements. But under affordable housing, I commend the commission and the Committee on the Housing Now campaign, actually. I think there's some great improvements there to be implemented. In particular, I like the new VEDA, which is the Voluntary Equitable Development Agreements. I think those are going to be really helpful in hiring from a local talent pool and incentivizing retraining and competitive wages. I also think the fund is uniquely positioned to try some new avenues of new types of programs. For example, an unsecured bridge loan for home improvements that could help on the lead remediation problem the third ward's seeing. In terms of the underemployment side and black unemployment in the ward, I think there's an opportunity actually for the former city manager Greg Sundstrom mentioned his last report, an innovation fund, which has kind of been put on the back burner so it can be flushed out more. But I think that fund could support a number of opportunities, such as a minority-owned venture capital group in town. I think it could also backstop a small business lending program like a loan loss reserve. These are opportunities that we haven't quite explored. I also think the VEDAs can also push for more stringent hiring policies in this area. And our goal is to increase density in the business district while trying to retain the current residents. I think that's always got to be the goal, make sure they share in the job opportunities that exist as a result of the investment.
And the assets? You have a few seconds to talk about assets.
Assets in terms of organizations?
However you choose to respond.
Sure. I think there are a number of nonprofit organizations in the area, such as Link, Help Build Communities, among others. I'm on the board of Well House as well. I think we need the nonprofits to be a voice for the community, be at the table. So I consider those an asset. I also consider the properties available in the business districts an opportunity if used properly. So I think there's plenty of room for growth in the third ward.
Thank you.
Hi.
Hi.
One of the primary responsibilities of the City Commission every year is the passage of a recommendation of the annual budget. What in your background gives you experience to bring to critically thinking through that and ratifying the annual budget?
I appreciate the question. So my background, actually, I went to school here in Grand Valley for finance, received an MBA in finance. I've worked for a brief stint at Merrill Lynch, also in Charter Capital Partners, where I did financial auditing for mergers and acquisition deals. I've also led and championed a lot of economic development programs at the state level. I was the gatekeeper for the city of Grand Rapids for programs like the Business Accelerator Fund. So I've managed a lot of due diligence and deal flow for those programs. I've also prepared a number of budgets for GR Current, you see on my resume, as well as Stark Garden, budgets that would go for formal approval to the Grand Rapids LDFA. So I do have a pretty robust background in, I guess, financial management, as you would say.
Thank you.
Austin, can you tell us what you're looking for in a city manager?
Excellent question. I think first and foremost, someone who can lead with humility, with their ear to the ground. They're active and engaged, meeting with citizens throughout the week, trying to hear what's happening at the ground level. I think a city commissioner needs to be well-read. They need to understand other opportunities that are happening outside of the city, so we can try to incorporate new ideas here, new types of programming, for example. I think we need to, there's a level of professional demeanor that a city commissioner needs to have, including timeliness and being able to collaborate with other members of the commission. For example, working with Commissioner Lanier on her initiatives in the 3rd Ward, I think that needs to be highly collaborative. And I think a city commissioner should always, try to represent their ward first, try to show that they have, the best interests at heart, that they're being inclusive, that they value diversity.
Thank you.
I just want to make a clarification. The question was city manager. What are you seeing in the city manager?
Thank you for the clarification.
No problem.
Yeah, 45 seconds. City manager.
Right.
So in a city manager, I'm actually looking for someone who's coming from a larger city than Grand Rapids. I'm looking for experience in city management, either as a city manager or a deputy city manager, coming from, like I said, a place that's larger than Grand Rapids. They've worked with bigger populations. They know and can project out what type of growth Grand Rapids is going to see. I would love to see some level of financial management background. I would also like to see diversity in city management, if we could. And I would also like to see someone who has an understanding of technical aspects. So as we look at new investments in city infrastructure, that's a personal passion of mine, so it's something I'd be looking for.
Thank you.
Last question. If appointed, you'll serve for a little over a year in an appointed capacity, and then would be eligible to run for election. Would you consider running for election after an appointment?
Absolutely, and I think anybody who steps up here should be saying that. I think that for me, I have a unique background working and straddling the private-public partnership world, and I think many of the city's challenges and possible solutions are probably going to come from new initiatives that straddle that line. And I think the commission is going to benefit from a millennial voice at the table as well, as we look to make the city an attractive place for all age groups. So I'm very excited to be here.
Thank you so much. That concludes our 5 questions. This committee has the goal of reviewing the candidates today and then making recommendations for the City Commission for their interviews, which will take place on Tuesday, July 24th. And so we will be in touch. Thank you so much for your time, and thanks for being here.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
because we have maybe a gap at this point, this will be a good time to take a 5-minute break, and then we'll
Bio
reconvene.
break.
I didn't want to get that specific, but thanks, Sam. Taking care of that.
so I could need that, so I might get low blood sugar.
Uh-oh. Right. Probably couldn't get in. Oh, we had it, all right. Ms. Hampton, thank you so much for being with us. We're going to reconvene. We want to take a quick break. This subcommittee, we're reconvening. This subcommittee has the task of interviewing all of the applicants and making a recommendation to the full City Commission for their interviews on the 24th of July. We have 5 questions for you today. You will have 2 minutes to respond to each of those 5 questions. Okay? Before we get started with the questions, we will quickly just introduce ourselves so that you'll know who's around the table. Commissioner O'Connor?
Yeah, John O'Connor, First Ward City Commissioner.
Hi, Sarah. I'm Raul Isashi, the Third Ward.
Christine Olmeda, Third Ward.
Joel Honor, Grand Rapids City Clerk.
Sunita Lanier, Third Ward City Commissioner.
Jermel Eddy, Third Ward resident.
Hi, Sarah. I'm a Sam Cummings, Second Ward City resident.
Okay.
Joanne King, Third Ward resident.
Joe Jones, Second Ward Commissioner.
Thank you.
So, Sarah, we would like to know, why are you interested in being a commissioner for the Third Ward? Why are you interested in serving?
Well, my primary reason is I wanted to serve my community and have a voice in the local issues, have a voice in the key local issues that affect the community.
Thank you. The second question is simply to identify 2 current assets and 2 areas of concern that you feel exist within the Third Ward.
Okay, I do know that there is a problem with affordable housing, the housing crisis, and also the trust and safe neighborhoods, and the police and community relations.
And then would you like to share 2 assets?
2 assets of the Third Ward. Well, we have a great community, a great educational system, and we have great people living in the Third Ward.
Thank you. Sam, you're on.
Hi. Yeah, just writing. Sorry, Sarah.
No problem.
How you doing?
I'm doing great.
Great. One of the primary responsibilities of a city commissioner is the passage or
Ratification.
Yeah, ratification of, thank you, Joel.
Yep.
It sucks to get old, right? Yeah, is the understanding, the studying, and then the ratification of the annual city budget. What in your experience would you rely on when you are called to make a vote or make a recommendation for that ratification annually?
I have an extensive experience in budget allocations as postmaster and manager of customer service operation in the greater Detroit metropolitan area. I had a budget of $7,600,000 that was allocated properly, and I also know the importance of budget allocations. I was over a large metropolitan area. I was responsible for the training, all of the fleet, etc., that required me to stay within an authorized budget. So I'm very aware of how important working within an authorized budget is.
Thank you very much.
Sarah, I have the next question. What are you looking for in a city manager? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
what am I looking for in a city manager?
Yes.
Well, first of all, I would want our city manager to be open-minded, someone that's compassionate and really care about the community and the people that in the community. The city manager should also be aware of the budget operations, and they should also know that there is a discourse in the community. I think the city manager should make sure that those people that are working with him work collectively to reach or attain organizational goals. I think he should be aware of that. And I also feel that our city manager should be compassionate and have an ear to listen to what's going on in our community and work collectively with the commissioners and the mayor to bring about a change.
Thank you.
If appointed to be the Third Ward City Commissioner, you'll serve for a little over a year in an appointed capacity, and then would be eligible to run for election. Would you consider running for election if appointed?
Yes.
Thank you.
So that concludes all of the questions that we have for you today. This body will make a decision later this afternoon of which of the candidates that we interviewed today that we will make a recommendation for the commission to interview on the 24th.
Okay, is that it?
Looks like you have a question for us?
Well, I just wanted to say that I understand the importance of serving as Third Ward Commissioner and the diversity that's needed in the Third Ward. I understand that as a commissioner, you would need to embrace the differences, but not allow the differences to affect our judging, our decision-making. So I would serve, if I'm selected, dutifully and hopefully move the city forward. You know, this is my city. I was raised in the city. I love the city. I love the people in the city, and I am really looking forward to working with city commissioners to help facilitate the change that's needed with our policing, our school system, our housing crisis. I am really looking forward and would love to work for that.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here this afternoon.
Thank you.
It gets hot up here, doesn't it, after a while?
It does. The lights are kind of warm. Well, then they'll tell you that because it's televised, it goes dark.
Oh.
So that's part of why the
This
lights
is not
are
my best light. Do I look bald?
You look fine, Sam.
Makeup.
Yeah, makeup, in-walk makeup. Give him a little powder. Good
Hi.
afternoon. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you for having me.
Hi, I am Sunita Lanier, and I have the privilege of serving as the Third Ward Commissioner for the City of Grand Rapids. And with me is the subcommittee for the Third Ward Commissioner interviews.
Mm-hmm.
And this body has the charge of interviewing and then narrowing down the candidates to recommend a smaller slate of candidates for the commission to interview on the 24th.
Mm-hmm.
So today we will quickly introduce ourselves, and then we will ask you 5 questions.
Okay.
You'll have 2 minutes to respond to each of those questions.
All right.
Okay, so we'll start with Commissioner Jones with the introduction.
Hi, Joe Jones, Second Ward Commissioner.
Nice to meet you.
Likewise.
Joanne King, Third Ward resident.
Hi, Marcy. I'm Sam Cummings. I'm a Second Ward resident.
And I'm Jermel Eddy. I'm a Third Ward resident.
Nice to meet you.
Joel Hunter, Grand Rapids City Clerk.
Christine Olmeda, Third Ward resident.
Raul Isasi, I live in the Third Ward.
John O'Connor, First Ward City Commissioner.
Nice to meet you all.
So Marcy, why are you interested in serving as a commissioner for the Third Ward? Could you tell us that in 2 minutes?
I've been here for 20 years. I've always been interested in politics, but we've lived here for 20 years. And I think it really started for me when the mortgage market collapsed. And there were just some really horrible changes in our neighborhood, and that kind of lit a fire for me. And I've been involved with block clubs through the last 20 years, and it's been a struggle because of our zip code. We were always excluded from any kind of neighborhood association, and times are really tough. So I'm glad to have this opportunity to try to serve my neighborhood now.
Okay, thank you.
Marcy, I would love for you to identify 2 current assets and two areas of concern that you see that exist within the Third Ward.
2 of the assets, I think, is in our neighborhood. It's very diverse right now. It's got a good mix of people. I was just talking to a neighborhood yesterday who was appreciative of that. And there's a stronger interest now. We're having a big block club party this weekend, and I think the interest will be really good. We've passed out more than 1,000 flyers, and there's always been people say, yeah, we'll be there, we're interested in that. So there was really never that level of community interest before. So that would be one asset. Other asset. I'm gonna circle back to that one, I guess. I would say the another one is a problem right now would be schools. There's just, the choices aren't so great where we're at. I think it's campus, and I think Sigsbee is limited too. And it's just odd, the way kids are scattered all through the winds, and some are going to charter and some are going to public. So I would say that is a struggle for us in our neighborhood.
Thank you.
Hi.
Hi.
How you doing?
Good.
Great. Marcy, one of the primary responsibilities of City Commissioner is to study and ratify annually the city budget, which is plus or minus. This year it's actually more than $500 million. Could you maybe just explain the background that would help you in articulating that and in helping you make an informed decision about that?
For that, I would look back to my work as what was called a self-determination coordinator and a social work job that also led to working with a Medicaid fiduciary. So in that capacity, though I was in a small county, I would help individuals with developmental disabilities manage how they spent their Medicaid dollars to get the services they want. And I think we were close to $1 million that I was responsible for, like keeping an eye on and see how folks were spending it. Were they happy with what they were getting and the quality services? And in that role too, the county that I worked for participated in a Robert Wood Johnson grant about self-determination, empowering people with disabilities. And so I got to collect data for our county, and then that was an interesting thing to see how much was saved by the state and how quality improved and satisfaction improved for services.
Thank you.
Marcia, I have the next question. What are you looking for in a city manager?
For a city manager. I did not give that one any thought before coming today. City manager. I like it when they've been here a while. Sometimes I find it odd when people come from other communities, and the learning curve with getting to know Grand Rapids and its history, and we're kind of a unique little place.
Hi, Marcy. If you were appointed to the Third Ward Commissioner position, you would serve for a little over a year and then would be eligible to run for re-election. Would you consider running for re-election if appointed?
Only if the constituents were happy with the job that I did.
So Marcy, that concludes our 5 questions that we have for today. And again, this body will be making their recommendations or making the determination of those who they will recommend to the full commission for interviews on the 24th.
All right. Is it appropriate if I shake everybody's hand?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think we met the other day in front of my house. Were you at the Hollyhock Parade?
Again.
Nice to see you. Right, you never know. You'll see somebody.
Well, you see, it is pretty warm. He said it was hot, so. I can imagine.
Good afternoon. How are you today?
I am fine, thank you, Commissioner Lanier.
Thank you so much for being with us. I am obviously Sanita Lanier. We are aware of each other, but I want to formally introduce myself and welcome you to the first round interviews for the Third Ward City Commission seat.
Thank you.
This body is designed to interview the candidates on the first round and then make recommendations to the full commission for their interviews, which will take place on the 24th. So today we will interview and then make those recommendations. Before we get started, we have 5 questions to ask, and you'll have 2 minutes to respond to each of those 5 questions.
Okay.
So we'll start with introducing ourselves. Commissioner Jones.
Joe Jones, Second Ward City Commissioner.
Third Ward resident.
Hi, Nathaniel. I'm Sam Cummings. I'm a Second Ward resident.
Jamal Eddy, Third Ward resident.
Joel Hondorf, Grand Rapids City Clerk.
Christine Olmeda, Third Ward resident.
Mr. Moody, hello.
Good to see you, Eddie, to take a seat in the city to also help the city grow. I've seen Grand Rapids in its worst and I see it in its best, and we made a lot of good progress. And I feel at this point in time, as I shall repeat myself, that I feel that I'm ready to take a part in the progress of Grand Rapids and to see it grow a little further.
Thank you.
And next, I would like to ask you to identify 2 assets that you see in the Third Ward, as well as 2 areas of concern that you see.
Well, one asset I see in the Third Ward is the progress of businesses. The business in the Third Ward is growing rapidly. I think that's a great progress that has occurred within our Third Ward. The other is that we still have the opportunity to deal with housing. We still have some housing issues that are occurring, and I think it's important that we focus on those things and to make sure that everybody who can afford a house affordably.
Thank you.
Hi.
How you doing?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
Great. One of the primary responsibilities of city commissioner, as you may know, is the annual passage of the budget, which this year is more than $500 million. What experience would you rely on in performing that fiduciary responsibility annually?
In terms of understanding budgets, is the question? Or just
Understanding and then ratification of.
Oh, I think for me, in understanding budgets, but also to look at where the city's going, where we are in terms of debt, what do we need to do to ratify the debt, or what do we need to grow in terms of where we're going to take the city financially. In terms of understanding the budget, pretty much budgets are pretty much set by myself and my wife at home. I ran a business for years and understand how it operates, from understanding that where we are from a fiscal period to what we need to do in the years that are yet to come. I'm not sure if that's the type of question that you're looking for, but I think that whatever is before me in terms of budget-wise, I have the ability to sit down and to look at the budget and to get an understanding as to where we need to go.
Thank you.
I have the next question. Can you tell us what you're looking for in a city manager?
What I'm looking for in a city manager is someone who has a heart for the city, someone who is able to work with the commission and with the mayor, and has an understanding as to the city's growth and has an understanding in dealing with the community. The community, in my opinion, is the city, and it is ran through the commission from the mayor's standpoint, but it is the community who brings the issues up front. So I hope that city manager would be willing to listen and has an understanding of budgets, understanding as to how to run a city. We know that Grand Rapids is set up on a charter system, and this charter system is pretty much ran by the city manager, along with the city commissioners.
Thank you.
Welcome. If appointed to be the representative for the Third Ward Commissioner to fill out this term, you'd have about a year, a little over a year that you'd be able to serve, and then you'd be eligible to run for re-election. Would you then consider running for re-election if appointed to this position?
Yes, I would.
All right, thank you very much.
So, Pastor Moody, that concludes our 5 questions that we have for you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
And as mentioned earlier, the next round is on July 24th, and today we'll be making the decisions of who will be a part of the next round.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
All of you have a nice day.
Thank you, you too. Thank you.
The candidates are coming in. We have another opportunity for a break, so hang out at those lockers again. Sipping on
That open
Coke.
sandwich out there is mine.
Right.
MC go. Second.
You should have done that. Right as I'm trying to compose your.
Mr. Snyder, thank you so much for being with us this afternoon.
Thank you for having me.
It's been a long day for some of us, so we're giddy. So today, this is the subcommittee, and the subcommittee is charged with interviewing the candidates. And we have 5 questions to ask you. You'll have 2 minutes to respond to each question.
Okay.
And then the subcommittee will make the decision of who of the candidates that we've interviewed, who to send to the city commission for second phase of interviews.
Okay.
So we'll try and do that today after all of our interviews are completed.
Okay.
So we will start with introductions and then we'll get right to those questions.
Sounds good.
Thank you. Commissioner Jones?
Hi, Mr. Snyder. Joe Jones, Second Ward City Commissioner.
Joanne King, Third Ward resident.
Jeffrey or Mr. Snyder?
Jeff's fine.
Jeff. Hi, Sam Cummings. I'm a resident in the second ward.
I'm Jermel Eddy, resident in the 3rd Ward.
Joel Hondorp, Grand Rapids City Clerk.
Christina Olmeda, Third Ward resident.
Hi, Jeff. I'm Raul Isase. I live in the 3rd Ward.
John O'Connor, First Ward City Commissioner.
Excellent. Nice to meet you all.
So Jeff, can you tell us why you are interested in serving as a commissioner for the 3rd Ward?
Yes. So first of all, I've lived in the 3rd Ward almost my entire life. There was a 1.5-year period right after I got married where I lived in Granville, but before that I lived in the 3rd Ward. And then as soon as we were going to buy our first house, we bought in the 3rd Ward and have lived there ever since. And I've also worked in politics in my career. I worked in the State House of Representatives for 5.5 years. Working with public policy and serving in government is something that I've always been interested in. I think that I have the skills and experience that I could do well there. And even since leaving the House, I've worked in a government affairs position, working with local governments all across West Michigan. And I just think that that experience, along with growing up here, would serve well for this position.
Thank you.
Jeff, I want to ask that you identify two areas of concern that you can identify in the 3rd Ward, as well as 2 assets that you see.
Okay. Areas of concern, I would say affordable housing is a big one, and there's a couple different issues with that. One is folks are looking to move here. There's not enough affordable housing for them, but also, and maybe in some ways even more concerning, is long-term residents being priced out of where they live now and pushing, particularly low-income folks out of the 3rd Ward in the city as a whole, I think is very concerning. And along with that, in housing in the 3rd Ward is some of the older housing stock in the city. There's a lot of lead paint and other issues with that. I know the 49507 zip code is one of the highest in the state for lead contamination, and that's obviously a major concern. And then the other concern I would have would be police community relations. I think there's a strained relationship, to maybe put it mildly. And I think that's something that's going to take a long time. It's going to take a lot of long, dedicated, intentional work to improve, but I think it's something that's critically important to improve. Assets, there's a lot of great community organizations, churches, nonprofits that have been in the city in the 3rd Ward for a long, long time, that have deep roots. So I think that's a real strong asset. And then also the people who live there. There's a lot of long-time city residents in the 3rd Ward who, again, have very deep roots. And I think there's a lot of untapped potential in the 3rd Ward in terms of the people who live there.
Thank you.
Hi, Jeff. One of the primary responsibilities of the City Commission is the annual scrutiny of and ratification of the budget, which this year is more than $500 million. What, in your experience, would you draw upon to analyze that and give you comfort in casting a vote on it?
Sure. So when I worked in the State House, 5 of those 5.5 years as a legislative director, And my boss did not serve on the appropriations committee, so we didn't go through line by line crafting the budget. But he did obviously have to vote on the budget. And so there was a lot of policy analysis, a lot of review, some input to try to improve funding or switch funding around for projects and programs that he supported. So there was a decent amount of budget review work that I've done in terms of government budgets. Obviously, the state budget's a little different animal than the city. And then also at work, I do have, it's a pretty small budget, but there's a budget that I oversee that I'm responsible for running and using to, maximize my work. So those are the two things that I think would be most directly related for that.
I have the next question, Jeff. Can you tell us what you are looking for in a city manager?
Yes, first would be experience, preferential or preferably in municipal management. However, I think just the skills going along with managing a large organization with a lot of employees that's doing a lot of different things is very important. I think there's also some, not necessarily, maybe you call them soft skills that would be necessary or preferable. Someone who's a good listener, someone who's patient, someone who works in a very collaborative way, someone who's a good communicator. I think all of those things are going to be very important because you're working, with a whole host of different people and organizations, both in the city government, outside of the government, residents. So those are kind of the main things that I would look for.
Thank you.
Hi, Jeff. Last question of the day. If you're appointed to be Third Ward City Commissioner, you'll get to serve for a little over a year in that capacity, and then you'll be eligible to run for election. Would you consider running for election if appointed?
Yes. If I was appointed, my intention would be to run, assuming that no unforeseen circumstance came up that would prevent me from doing so.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Snyder, I think that concludes the 5 questions we have for you. And as mentioned earlier, on the 24th is the next phase of this, and today we will be making the decision about who will be interviewed on the 24th.
Okay, excellent.
Thank you so much for your time, and thanks for being here.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. So we have one candidate left, and because we're still running ahead of schedule, we will await her arrival.
Okay, I'll talk. Oh, loud. Here, just set this here. Hi. So I'm Audrey Campbell. I'm your 6:15. You're at I don't know what time.
Yes, you are. So thank you so much for being flexible enough to come quickly when our city clerk contacted you to let you know we were moving ahead schedule.
I was good too until I got on the highway. I was like, no.
That's right.
But
that's okay. So you're here and catch your breath. We are the subcommittee for the 3rd Ward City Commission search, and we are interviewing the candidates today. Our goal is we just all had chocolate, so who knows what may happen after this.
Okay.
But our goal is to interview and then make a decision about which candidates will be recommended for the full commission to interview on the 24th of July.
okay.
And we are thankful that you're here with us. There were 10 candidates, and as of today, we have 8 that we are interviewing.
All
So
right.
you're the 8th, and that's part of the moving around of the schedule and asking you to come in a little bit early this afternoon. So we have 5 questions for you.
Okay.
You will have 2 minutes to reply to each of those questions.
Okay.
And then that'll conclude the interview today. Okay? So we'll
Okay.
start off by quickly introducing ourselves. I'm Sunita Lanier, and I have the privilege of serving as the 3rd Ward Commissioner for the City of Grand Rapids. And
Oh, wow, okay.
Now I'll turn over to Commissioner Jones.
Hi, Ms. Campbell.
Hi.
Joe Jones, 2nd Ward City Commissioner.
Nice to meet you.
Likewise.
Joanne King, 3rd Ward resident.
Oh,
I'm Brad
awesome.
Pitt from
Brad Pitt?
No, Sam Cummings. I'm 2nd Ward.
Can everyone make sure that you have your microphones on and you're speaking into them so that the audience can hear it?
Madam President, could he identify himself?
Yes, please. So Mr. Cummings, if you could repeat
Sam
yourself.
Cummings, 2nd Ward, city resident.
Jermel Eddy, 3rd Ward resident.
Joel Hondorp, Grand Rapids City Clerk.
Christine Olmeda, 3rd Ward resident.
Hi, Ms. Campbell. I'm Raul Isasti. I live in the 3rd Ward.
John O'Connor, 1st Ward City Commissioner.
Okay, nice to meet you all. Hope I won't be tested later.
So could you tell us why you are interested in serving as a 3rd Ward Commissioner?
Well, I have always been working as an advocate for different people my whole life. And I've been living in the 3rd Ward for about 3.5 years. And originally what I started doing is doing canvassing and going around making sure everyone's registered to vote and asking them what were the most important issues to them nationally and locally. And I wasn't really sure where I was going with it. I went for some training, and then a friend of mine and I have been just knocking on doors, and so far we haven't had any doors slammed in our face, which is sort of cool. And my friend that I canvassed with saw this opening, and she's been really encouraging me to run for office, and I've been thinking about it, and I didn't know this was available. So I thought, well, sometimes you just need to say yes and give it a shot. And I have been, recently, I have many African American neighbors, and I've been really upset about, I don't know how to explain this. Well, they don't have the same equality and treatment that I have, and I can see it, and it really upsets me. And when I did sign up to go to the Michigan Democratic Convention for the Attorney General, and I spent the entire day before the voting in the Black Caucus room, and I got to see how strong they were, how powerful they were advocating for the community. And I mean, I don't know if I can be that person, but I really want to be that kind of a strong advocate for them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Audrey, this next question is going to ask you to identify 2 assets and 2 areas of concern that you see within the third ward?
Well, should I go with the positives first, right? I am a really, I've been told I'm a really good at advocating for people. I am good at coming up with solutions. I don't give up. I try to do it like as positive as possible, but sometimes you have to get firm to get things done. I did do some advocating for special ed kids for many years in Allegan County, and I'll tell you, I had to get tough sometimes to get the kids and their parents the services that they were supposed to be getting. And I kind of alluded to that, but I know I have skills with solving problems. It's at the dance studio I work for, they joke about it. Like, if you need to figure something out, ask Audrey, she can always come up with something. I think a weakness would be that I've only lived in this community for 3.5 years, and I lived in 3 years in the city of Grand Rapids prior to that, which could also, I mean, maybe it could be an asset. I don't have a lot of connections other than friends. I feel like it kind of gives me a fresh perspective, maybe. I mean, I would have to study a lot and learn a lot of things and listen to a lot of people. But I think it can work both ways as an advantage and a disadvantage. Another disadvantage is...
Excuse me, Audrey. So let me just restate the question. Was the assets of the third ward community, not you personally, but what the assets you see in the third ward, as well as the area's concerns in the third ward?
Well, I think its assets are its diversity. Now that I've been knocking on doors and getting to know my neighbors, they're pretty amazing. And I know it's the most diverse ward, I think that's what I was told. And I know that some of the negatives that people are worried about is the relationship with police and the way that they have to bus their kids to school, like that they have to ride I think it's the high school kids have to ride the city bus. And there were several people that brought that up when I asked them what were their concerns in the area.
Thank you.
Hi, Audrey.
Hi, how are you?
Fantastic. How are you? Thanks for asking. One of the primary responsibilities of City Commission is the analysis, scrutiny of, and then ratification of the annual city budget. What experience or education or whatever would you draw on in order to inform your analysis and vote on that annually?
Well, I guess I would say I have, when I had a regulatory job with a drug company, and I did have to do some budget concerns with that. I don't have as much experience that I feel that I need. I watched some videos of your meetings and read other documents, and I thought I will have to get myself educated in this. In this regulatory job, though, I did learn how to read regulations. I was responsible for reporting everything to the company that, this was a drug company. So anything that the FDA came out with, I had to read periodicals like Wall Street Journal every day so that I could report to, the executives when we had to take action or learn how to comply with another regulation. So that would be a strength. But as far as the budget issues, I would have to be trained in that.
Thank you.
I have the next question, Audrey. What are you looking for in a city manager?
What would I look for? That's a good question. I think because this is different, I came from, I was born in Chicago, which is a big town, but I didn't live there very long. But I raised my kids in Allegan. And, the things that I've noticed, I really like that it feels like you guys make sure that the voices of the citizens are heard. That's super important to me. And even if people get emotional because, they might get frustrated or something's really important to them, like, I still want to hear everything that they want to say. That's super important. And I feel like you guys do that here. I'm not sure, like, if I have expectations, if I got some more experience, I could probably answer that a little bit better. But there's a lot of things that I've seen that I really appreciate that happens.
Thank you.
All right, last question. If you're appointed to be Third Ward City Commissioner, you'll serve for a little over a year as an appointed commissioner, and then you would have the opportunity to run for election as a Third Ward City Commissioner. Would you do so?
If you like me. No, I intend on doing it, so.
Very good, thank you.
So, Audrey, that concludes the 5 questions that we have for you.
Okay.
As mentioned earlier, we will be deliberating actually immediately, and we will make a determination about which candidates to send for the interviews by the City Commission on July 24th. And that concludes this time.
All right.
Thank
Do you
you
know
so-
when you'll be letting people know by?
The clerk's office will probably make notifications to candidates tomorrow.
Oh, wow, okay.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much. I'm glad I got to talk to you no matter what happens. It was
Absolutely, and thank you
very
so much again
interesting.
for rushing down
Oh.
and being with us this afternoon.
I didn't break any laws. I promise. The traffic was too busy. It didn't
Busy
allow
to do
me.
that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So committee, our next step then is to take the cover sheet that we all have and the 2 names that we need to strike to make sure that we're not including are the 6 o'clock and the 4:45. And then the instructions that we received earlier, I'll just kind of repeat those to make sure we're all on the same page. So the ranking will be, it says now 1 to 10 on the sheet, but that should be 1 to 8. And as you're ranking, you would rank your highest candidate with the highest number, the candidate that you desire to move forward the most with the highest number, and then you go downward from there. So you aren't using the same number more than once, so it is definitely a ranking. Okay, so take some time to do that. You'll cut the mics off, and then when you have completed your ranking, then you can just turn that into the clerk, so he'll quickly put it into a spreadsheet to kind of come back with.
Do you want our names? No,
No.
not necessary.
No. I'm sorry, the Jazz.
And you're welcome.
With his microphone on.
That's right.
Thank you for that intermission music. The clerk, in alphabetical order, will share the names of the candidates, the top 3 or 4 candidates. He will share those names with us in alpha order.
Let's rephrase that. So you want to know the top 4? Do we have number 4 and number 5 have the same amount of votes?
Yeah, so then I guess it'll end up being 5 if 4 and 5 are tied.
So the top 5 alphabetically are Ryan Anderson, Paula Collier, Austin Dean, Nathaniel Moody, and Jeffrey Snyder.
Okay, so subcommittee, we have a couple options here. We can decide to send all 5 to the commission so that they can have full interviews with each of those candidates. We could look at the 2 candidates that were tied at that 4th place and make a determination about one or the other. I can tell you this, in our multiple rounds, I think with Commissioner Jones, and you may know this better than I or Commissioner O'Connor, you're experiencing it, but so when we did our first round, I think the commission narrowed the candidates down to 3 after the first round. And then those 3 we had additional interviews with and such. So we could just choose the top 3 and send them. So just kind of giving you a few options that we have here. And this is the time for us to kind of talk through all of that. We know who the candidates are. Who are the 2 candidates that were tied at 4th?
Paula Collier and Jeffrey Snyder.
Okay, so just so that we'll know as we're determining, you know, kind of which candidates we have there. So if any of you want to do what Raul is doing right now, which is kind of going through the stack and kind of pulling those candidates out to kind of talk about those candidates, you can do that too, and then we can kind of talk. We have a little bit of time, so I don't want anyone to feel rushed, but so that's where we are.
So, Madam Chair, we're just sort of in open discussion right now? Okay. Okay. So, if I may, is another option could be that we prioritize the 5 we have and try to whittle it down to 3?
We could do that too.
We could, and would you prefer that be done by secret ballot again, or should we talk about it, or?
That's up to the subcommittee. I think we can choose whether we would want to do another ballot. We have paper here that we can tear up and quickly do that if we wanted to do it that way, or we could just have the discussion. So it's up to the subcommittee at this point.
Can you read that one more time?
Sure.
So you want to know the top 5 alphabetically. Well, it's Ryan Anderson, Austin Dean, Nathaniel Moody were 1, 2, and 3 alphabetically, and then the 4th tied for 4 and 5 were Paula Collier and Jeffrey Snyder.
I think it's important to note that this does come back to the city. This is important to note that this does come back to the city commission, and this is a recommendation for who should be interviewed, not necessarily a recommendation of rank ordered candidates.
That's right.
So I think that's just important that we keep that in mind as we decide our course of action here. That this should just, we're as a non-quorum body of the city commission, we are making a recommendation of who should be interviewed by the thing, and not making a recommendation of
Who the next
1, 2, 3,
commissioner
4,
will be.
5
Right.
in any specific order. Just
Certainly, but as city commissioners, I mean, your hope is that this body would bring you 3.
I don't know.
We set a specific number,
I think we left it to the subcommittee to make the recommendation. And I think the reason it's important to do it that way is because you have situations like this where you have 2 candidates that tied. And so, you know, if you force the hand of the subcommittee saying you have to give us a specific number, then it doesn't provide the flexibility for this group to then make a determination about what they feel the next best step is. So maybe that's, we could just quickly do a round robin to talk about, based on a few options that we've talked about, what the preference is, because I know it's tough, and I know, you know, we're all kind of, some of us are a little bit more used to this in a public setting, but I want to make sure that you all are comfortable too. So if we could just quickly go around, if you don't have a preference, it's okay to say that too. And then we can just talk through those who do have preferences. We can kind of talk through the pros and cons of that, and then go back to, you know, trying to make a determination. Okay? Christine,
Can I ask
please.
a question? Just if, would the number of candidates moving forward determine the amount of time that they would have to be interviewed? That is, if we had more candidates moving forward, would they have a shorter amount of time with the commission?
That's a good
just to understand.
That's a good question. So right now, I do know that it's, the meeting times are set, but there may be flexibility in when those can start. And because we have not communicated to the candidates yet the times, I think there's a little bit of flexibility. I don't know how much flexibility we have as a commission on the 24th, but
I think
we can work around time.
I think it was set for 4 to 7, because we had to set a special meeting.
Yes, that's true. Yeah.
Because I would, I guess I would like to just consider that if so many went forward, that the amount of time that they would have, that you wouldn't get to have a fuller picture of the candidates. And in my mind, as I was considering this, is who would I like to hear more extensively from, and making sure that all the people that move forward, we do have, the commission has the opportunity to hear more extensively from.
And I'm just looking at our schedule, which that's how it's set now, which doesn't mean we don't have flexibility. There's potential for being able to add more time on the front end of that. I don't know how much, because I don't know everybody else's schedule, you know, but there's a little bit of time there. But I think that's a really good question, and the time is a factor, but if we think that we want more candidates, then I think the commission would have to adjust the work session that we have on our calendars for that day to accommodate. So now we can do round robin. Which one of my colleagues do I want to start with? O'Connor, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I'm not feeling strongly either way. I'm not.
No preference?
No, I mean, I'm here to do the work. So if it's 3 or 5, let's. You know, we're gonna do it. And we're gonna do it right. So I'm not gonna. Yeah, it doesn't bother me either way.
I feel with the 5 of them moving forward.
Okay, you have a preference?
I don't have a strong preference, but I would lean towards it, seeing as if they're all closely grouped in our rankings, that we would hear from, that you would hear from all five.
Okay, preference?
If I agree with Christine that, you know, if they're all closely ranked, then hearing from 5. But if also like the thought of having it narrowed down to 3, depending on the amount of, I guess, the ranking in between those 4th and 5th spots.
I forgot to say the interviews were kind of short, so I think just giving them another opportunity would be good.
To expound upon.
Because it was really quick.
Yeah, I think we have strong candidates. I would say that the top 3, at least in my, based on my analysis of the resumes, their applications are strong. I would say that, you know, they're, I mean, 2 of them are actually, or 2 of the top 5 are still here. And, you know, as just a demonstration of their eagerness for the job or a commitment, I think that says quite a bit. So, I mean, look, at some point you got to make a decision, and I think we've got strong candidates. Can I say just who my preference is?
Yeah, you have a right
So,
to.
I mean, I was probably, even though I didn't see him in person, but my preference would probably be I was most impressed by Ryan Anderson, both his responses to the application, his resume, his relative experience, and then the other three, I would say, are Austin. I was also impressed with. Again, his responses to the I disagree with him politically on a couple of things, but I know a couple of dark alleys. No, I'm just kidding. But I think he demonstrated a very thoughtful and appropriate response to, and really took the time to dig into it. Yeah.
Okay.
And likewise, Nathan or Nathaniel rather, and Jeff Snyder. So I would say that if we had to whittle it down to 4, those would be my 4. And I would say that Jeff Snyder would break the tie for me by the fact that he is here. That's how I would look at it. Like it or not.
Okay. Okay.
I really don't have a preference. I think the interview time was pretty short for a lot of them, so we didn't really get, like very good answers, I think, from some of them. So I don't know if we want to be responsible for choosing which 3 goes forward, or leave that to the commissioners to make that choice out of the 5. So I don't have a preference per se.
That is what we're charged to do.
Mm-hmm.
So we're charged to get 3?
No, I think what he's suggesting is that we're charged to make the recommendations of who the commission would do full interviews with.
Okay.
Yeah. I actually think that, just to counter a little bit, I think that there was only one candidate who went overtime. So on a couple of the questions, the rest of them finished early. So I don't think the time was a factor in the responses. Because, looking at the timer, they weren't running out of time. There was only one candidate that on a few occasions ran out of time.
I think what she was referring to, I think, was just the ability to have dialogue, right? It was one question response, where if it were a more casual interview, there probably would have been some back and forth and the ability to
So if you could
actually
have ask them some follow-up questions, you may have gotten some more extensive
Help
answers.
them to answer the questions.
Right, you're right.
Is that the potential format for the next?
No, that isn't
round?
the
So
practice we normally take. There are questions, and if someone were to have a response that caused someone to want to know more about that response, then there would be a follow-up question that could potentially be asked. But the couple times where we helped candidates to know that they were on the wrong track in their responses, that may happen where, just making those clarifications for candidates, that's something that happens. But the structure of it really is, here's your question and we're looking for your response, versus kind of pulling teeth to get people to respond with the right responses. That's less of a practice. Commissioner Jones or Joanne, were you done?
I'm good.
Pretty much done. Any preference on process moving forward, Commissioner?
I tend to agree with Commissioner O'Connor in terms of the not necessarily wedded to boiling it down to a smaller number and seeing perhaps some value in giving those top 5 an opportunity to expound a bit. So I'm okay. I'm with John also. We're going to be here anyway, so why not, have that experience. And, I just think everybody should go through this process like me. No, I'm just joking.
Well, I think the benefit of the top 5 is that so the commission will meet with them then on the 24th, and we could have the interviews scheduled for the top 5, if that's what we decide to move forward. And then on the 31st, when it's time for us to make a decision, if we wanted to narrow that 5 down, on the 24th, we would have the option of doing that because we will be gathering again on the 31st. 31st is the date we have scheduled to make the decision, but it could potentially include a 3rd interview if we wanted to do that. So, so then it doesn't feel like after interviewing 5 people, you know, having the pressure of trying to make a decision on one of those candidates at that time.
Do we get to know the, as far as rankings go, the distance between 3 and 4?
Yeah,
So, 6 points.
That's pretty significant.
What's that?
It was 6 points between,
3 and the tie at 4. The 2 that are tied at 4, 6 points.
right, but then you had 2 then you only had 2 points then between 5, you know, tied for 4th and then that 5th or 6th place.
Right. And then I think the other piece is that there's a 4-point difference between the first candidate and the second candidate. And then there's a 9-point difference between the second candidate and the third candidate.
Got it.
So there's significant difference there. That's a good question. I don't know who asked that, but that's a good question. Just, I don't know if that factors in with what people are deciding, but that's a good question. So what are we determining?
Can we know in non-alphabetical or in mathematical order?
Commissioner?
What's your question?
Can we know in
You went to the
mathematical order?
Sure.
Who got?
Yep, you sure can.
Well then, yeah, so.
Right, well, yeah.
So, Nathaniel Moody was, 55, Ryan Anderson, 51, Austin Dean, 44, Jeffrey Snyder, 38, Paula Collier, 38, and then Sarah Hampton at 36. That's the top 6 then.
Could you repeat that?
Sure. Nathaniel Moody, 55, Ryan Anderson, 51, Austin Dean, 44, Jeffrey Snyder, 38, Paula Collier, 38, and then Sarah Hampton, 36.
Might as well give the other 2.
And then Marcy Lewandowski Jenkins, 15, and then Audrey Campbell, 11.
Well, I mean, just in with I think 8 of us voting, a 6-point difference would just be the difference between one, like ranking one above the other for some fraction of the whole panel. So I don't think a 6-point difference is actually very significant in a ranking with the number of people that we have.
I love math majors.
I know, I know.
Got a person.
Well, what about the 9-point?
You don't want me to do the mean here. I'm not doing means and medians.
I was thinking the box and whisker plies. Don't know how to do that anymore.
So does that matter with the decision to move 5 forward?
Yeah. Ultimately, is this a voting body or are we just?
A recommending body.
It's a recommending,
so, yeah.
but how do we recommend? Is it?
By consensus.
By consensus. It is not by vote. Okay.
Yep. So 5 or keep talking. Those are our options right now. Do we send 5 or we keep having some conversation about what to do with the 5 that we have in front of us? O'Connor, keep 5 or keep talking? 5 or talk.
You know, 3 is fine with me.
Okay.
Yep.
Keep 5.
Okay.
I think I could still go either way. So.
Okay.
Top 3.
Okay.
Top 3.
Top 3.
Top 3.
All right. So.
I do either way with that.
Okay, so we're now saying 3, and I've heard 3, and I've also heard the top 3, because it doesn't matter. I mean, we don't necessarily have to send the scoring, because this is part of what that. I just want to make sure
we should agree on who those 3
Top
are.
3.
Yeah.
The top 3.
The top 3.
Top 3.
Top 3. Top 3. Top 3.
Yeah.
Top 3. All right, the consensus then is to interview the top three, Mr. City Clerk, Mr. Nathaniel Moody, Mr. Ryan Anderson, and Mr. Austin Dean. So if you could please make notification to each of those candidates by the end of business tomorrow, and get them scheduled for interviews with the City Commission on July 24th. We'd appreciate that. And start them at the earliest point of our schedule, so then that'll leave room for deliberations at the end. Okay? I cannot thank all of you enough for spending time with us and joining us in such a new process. We hope that the Diet Coke and water has been pleasing to you, and the sandwiches in the hall.
Becky Joe.
And Becky Joe and chocolate. But thank you so much for your service. We really appreciate it. If you can turn your packets in to the city clerk as you're exiting. If there are any other questions, I don't want to just kind of dismiss everyone. If there are questions that I can answer before we formally dismiss, any questions? Great. Great process. Thank you for your time. See you later.